Okay, we are back. You can stay with us for another segment because I know you have to get up early in the morning. You're doing the Today Show tomorrow, right?
I'm doing it, yes.
Well, would you stay for a little while with
yes, I can
this next
stay.
lady?
Yes.
She's a remarkable lady. She is Dr. Ruth Westheimer. She is a therapist for sexual problems, which she deals with on her radio show in New York City, which is on WYNY Sundays from 10 to 11 p.m. And she has written a book, I don't have a copy here, called Dr. Ruth's Guide for the Sexually Perplexed, which could mean a lot of people. It'll come out in January. That's why I don't have a copy. Would you welcome, please, Dr. Ruth Westheimer. I noticed something right away. As soon as you say the word sex, you get this kind of a little tittering sound, almost uncomfortableness or silliness. Why is that? You just say sex problems, and right away, why do people feel uncomfortable about that?
First of all, it is because that's the way we were brought up. That between the waist and the knees, there's nothing.
Ah.
As if it doesn't exist. Except maybe for having babies.
Right.
But not for pleasure, and not for anything that might be conducive to some good feelings.
Yeah. Is that because of our upbringing, our
yes,
cultural patterns?
And part of what I am doing on my radio program is to try to bring about some sexual literacy, which would mean that the way you can talk about reading, writing, arithmetic, you can also talk about sex.
Right.
And if you do it in good taste, and if you do it properly, then it can be, everything can be talked about.
But many people, adults, even adults, still feel uncomfortable, very often even speaking with their children or to each other, do they not?
Yes. You know, Johnny, if we could bring about talking about sexual activity, the way we talk about diet, the way we talk about food,
right,
without it having this kind of connotation that there's something not quite right about it,
right,
then we would be a step further. But we have to do it in good taste.
Right.
We have to do it in such a way that we don't ask each other personal questions, that we leave a certain amount of mystery in
right,
that sexual sphere, and still bring about good, scientifically based knowledge.
Can I ask you a question? I have a magazine here. This is the cover of Newsweek this week. It has created a great deal of controversy in this country because on the cover of Newsweek, and I won't show it on camera because there will be some people who will object to it. Mm-hmm. It is a painting by William Bailey, is a lovely young lady, and she is bare-breasted. And Newsweek had a lot of flack about this from people around the country. What is it that disturbs them? Is it the fact that this is some kind of, it's not a sexy picture in any sense, it's simply a portrait of many pictures you'll see hanging in great museums all over the country. But why does that still, in this day and age, create such controversy?
Well, I would say that I would actually agree. If Newsweek had asked me, should they put that cover on, and I have not seen it,
right,
I would say no.
Why?
Because we do have to take into account that we live in a society that has Orthodox people, either Orthodox Jews, Orthodox Catholics, Mormons, all kind of people who would find a cover like this offensive.
I see.
And I would say that if Newsweek would have a more, if she would be covered, she has a lovely face.
Right.
If she would be a little bit covered, maybe they would sell less copies. But you know what?
Right.
They could have inside an article that would talk about sexually explicit matters and nobody would take offense.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a little bit because this is a shock value.
Yeah. How many questions do you field on your average, in an average week from viewers?
Well, what's fantastic about that radio program, the way it has mushroomed.
Yeah.
I'm on 1 hour from 10 till 11 Sunday nights, and I get about between 300 and 400 phone calls. I can't answer all those.
Of course.
I answer about 20, 25, but they have a counter and they count those phone calls.
Mostly from men or mostly from women, or is it divided fairly
Interesting
equally?
question. I do get a lot of phone calls from young people. That's not because more young people listen to me. That's because who has patience to sit there and dial for 1 whole hour? So that's why the letters I get from all walks of life and from all ages. The phone calls, I would say, are divided, but interestingly, there are many men, if you ask me, is there a difference between the phone callers in terms of men and women? There are many men who ask about women's sexual satisfaction, who really want to be good lovers, because I train the best lovers in the tri-state area.
Do you?
New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, over the air.
You train them?
Yes.
That's good.
Just by talking.
I suppose, like anything, you have to have adequate training for that kind of activity, don't
Yes.
you?
Now, the callers, and I'll tell you about the training, the callers, very often the men ask questions about how can I know if my partner is satisfied, if she had an orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
Women more often ask questions, even not about the satisfaction of the man, because
Right.
that's obvious. They can know.
They can tell.
Yes.
Yes.
We don't have to be more explicit.
That's right.
But I welcome such questions because this shows a concerned lover, a concerned husband who wants to know if things are good or if they could be made better.
What's wrong with asking your partner?
That's the problem, Johnny. Because the way you started to ask me the question of why are people a little bit funny when they talk about this, we have not been permitted. And one of the things that I'm doing, I think, is give permission for good sexual functioning and for people talking to each other. Now, I don't advocate that she should tell him, you idiot, don't touch here, that doesn't do anything for me.
No, when you say,
Right.
when you say, hey, idiot, that tends to diminish very rapidly the urge.
Right.
Nobody likes to be put down.
Right, but what I would like to tell that couple is there is nothing wrong by sitting, having a cup of coffee,
Right.
and talking to each other, maybe outside of bed, maybe in a car, by saying, you know, honey, and take the positive. The other day I really felt good. It was just terrific. Maybe if you could do that again. Or,
Right.
what I also advise is take his hand, or take her hand, and do actually show her, without words, where things feel good. Because nobody can guess another person's mind.
Like a connect the dots kind of thing. I mean, to put it in simple terms.
I like that.
There's nothing wrong with that, is there?
No.
Well, most people, again, are sometimes shy about that because they'll feel that they're going to be rejected.
Exactly.
Or the other partner will think, oh, gosh, is that normal? Whatever that word means.
Right.
And we can get back and talk about what is considered normal and abnormal, if there's any such thing between two consenting partners. Okay? We'll take a break. We're coming right back. Don't go away. We are back. Thank you, Doc. We're talking with Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Diane, we're going to have to thank Diane because she has to go change. She is taping in about 10 minutes for another show for tomorrow morning.
Right.
Thank you for being here tonight. Look forward to Author Arthur. Thank you, Diane.
Bye, sweetheart. See you soon.
We were talking about, and I guess a lot of people are sexually repressed. They repress those
perplexed.
feelings or
Yes.
perplexed because sometimes people are a little afraid of their own sensuality or sexual feelings, like, gee, am I abnormal or am I normal? I remember some years ago, I had Dr. David Rubin on the show, and he'd had a book out, and the NBC censors said, well, there's only one thing you can't talk about on the show. And I said, well, here's a book from a doctor with good credentials who had written a book on sex. And I said, well, what is that subject we should not discuss? And they said, masturbation. Mm-hmm. And I said, why can one not discuss masturbation on television? And that struck me very, very funny. That was the one thing that somebody thought that should not be discussed.
You see, there again, the important part here is that one has to discuss the issue of self-gratification.
Right.
In a context that is possible for people from different walks of life to understand. For example, a baby boy can be born with an erection.
That's true.
Did you know that?
Yes.
And baby girls with lubrication in the vagina. If the boy or the girl touches down there, that is self-gratification. It feels good.
But what does the parent normally do?
Exactly. The parent normally puts a diaper on very fast.
No.
Right. So we know that this is the background we all come from, but we also know as a sex therapist and as a sex educator that I hear many questions from university, for example, where I just gave a lecture, how much masturbation is too much? because people are very concerned about it because it has never been talked about.
Well, I remember when I was a child, there were myths that everybody has heard, and then they will laugh, you will go blind.
Or
You
hair
will-
in the palm of your hand.
Yeah, all of those
You
things.
lose your hair.
All of that.
You go insane.
If that myth was true, I haven't seen a thing since 1938. But it's not true, but those myths still hold on.
Yes. And that's
Actually, it is a fairly normal practice, even among married people, unmarried people, and
especially also with the elderly.
Yeah.
For example, with people who have lost a partner.
Right.
But the important thing here is also to say that for some people to teach them good, healthy sexual functioning, it is important to say it is okay to self-gratify yourself, men and women.
Right.
Even sometimes in front of each other or in bed together in order to teach the partner what feels good.
Right.
Because the only way that that partner can learn is by either putting your hand over his hand or her hand, and to especially say there is nothing to be embarrassed about, there's nothing to be ashamed about. The best way to do that is to be with a partner that you do love,
Right.
that you do care for in a relationship, and to say, let's get away from this way of myth, because we know that no hair grows in the
Right.
palm of your hand, and some people worry. And you don't go blind.
And you don't go blind.
Right. But it's important because I see many people, seriously speaking now,
Right.
not sexually speaking, women who have never felt sexual gratification. They are married 19 years, never felt sexual gratification.
Are they blocking? As they
They
use
don't
that
touch themselves because they have been told a good girl doesn't do that.
Right.
They don't let their partner touch them because they also have been told it's not done.
Right.
And we know that then there's vasocongestion and a very unhappy feeling. And that's when they get all of these kind of ideas of being too tired,
Yeah.
having gone to the hairdresser, all of these one-liners.
Anything to avoid
That's
the
right.
confrontation.
That's right. So masturbation, what we have to say is that it's a healthy part of sexual activity. That doesn't mean that we want to educate a generation of masturbators.
Of course. But what you're simply trying to say, you should have no guilt feelings or hang-ups about it, and it's a perfectly normal activity,
Absolutely.
kept within certain guidelines.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. How do you feel about sex education in schools? That's another controversy that some people feel, parents feel, that children should be taught only in the home. But, of course, many parents fail to do it. And yet if you say it's in the school, then they say, well, I don't want a bunch of strangers. You know, there was a fellow out here, some teacher, I don't know his name, but got in some kind of trouble because he was a little too specific in certain things.
Not only too specific, Johnny. I believe that sex education has to be done in the schools, by the parents, and the church or the synagogues, all institutions.
together.
But schools have to do it with properly trained teachers, well-trained teachers. The professor in your state, of course, this would never happen in New York, you understand?
Of course.
The professor in your state, if my child, my daughter or my son,
Came home and told you that.
I would go directly to the president of that institution. Because this is what gives us, sex educators and sex therapists, such a hard time to get the message across, because there are some people who just do horrible, horrible things.
Right.
What he did is, if I read correctly in the papers, he actually did have sexual activity with students. I mean,
Those
there's
were the
no-
allegations anyway, yeah.
there's no question
Right.
that this is not sex education.
Yeah.
Sex education is to know when not to ask a personal question. In my office, I ask very personal questions, but that's different. If a man comes and he is a premature ejaculator, he ejaculates before he wants to. I ask very specific questions.
Right.
In my classrooms, I never ask a personal question. It is none of my business.
Right.
Who of the students has had a sexual experience, or who has had a homosexual experience, or who masturbates with which hand?
Yeah.
But we talk about all of these things.
Yeah. What is the, you must get a, you see, right away you feel that little feel, hey, masturbating the other hand. You see? Come on. As Joan Rivers said, grow up. What is the funniest, the most amusing question you've ever got?
Well, the one that sticks out in my mind lately is at a university.
Right.
Where a student was willing to stand up, not with questions. I do both.
Right.
I let them write questions for those who are uncomfortable, and I take questions from the floor. One male student, Dr. Westheimer, I read in a book that the peak of sexual activity is 19. I'm already 19 and a half, and I haven't had it.
You're kidding. Oh, thought he had missed the whole...
That he had missed his whole lifetime, and I was very fast was I able to calm him down and say it's going to last until the day you die, and don't worry, and wait for the right time and the right partner,
right.
And don't worry about it.
As most people know, or should know, maybe a lot of people don't, the most important sexual organ is the brain, isn't it?
Right between
your
ears, right.
That's what sets
no
the whole...
aphrodisiacs needed.
That's right, it's the
Right.
brain. We'll be right back.